Hello, I'm Stephen Missick, and I want to continue my series on Christian apologetics. And what I want to talk about today, let's start off with Jordan Peterson. And what brings this subject up was I saw a video by David Wood talking about Jordan Peterson's daughter, Michaela, and she's trying to, I guess she's inspired by her father, and she wants to become, a podcaster, a conservative podcaster. And Jordan Peterson has been, I think, very important, and he came into prominence by refusing to use, we have this bastardization of the English language and these preferred pronouns. And Canada is far further down, unfortunately, to becoming a totalitarian left-wing state. It's awful. And that seems to be where the United States is going. We don't want to go there. And it's really shameful to see what's happening in that country. So we have this newspeak, Orwellian newspeak, and they tell Jordan Peterson, you are going to speak newspeak, Orwellian newspeak, or else. And he says, I'm not going to do it. I'm not using these them, whatever pronouns. This isn't real. I'm a professor. I'm highly educated. You don't have the right to tell me what I can and cannot say and how I'm supposed to speak. So this is a lot of courage on his part. And I read his book, was it 12 Rules for Life? And he did an earlier book, I guess, based on his doctoral thesis called Maps of Meaning. I think he's done 12 more Rules for Life, and now he's done a new book on biblical commentary on the Old Testament. So he's risen to prominence, and he's also dealing with issues of masculinity. Now, according to his book, he was raised in a rural area in Canada. It has more traditional and Christian values. He's raised in the church. And now I think he doesn't profess to be a Christian, but he is aligned with us. And he's been a very effective speaker, and in so much that he's using, like he says, doing biblical commentary. And I think a lot of the things that he raises in his books are very important. And like I said, he's aligned, even though he's not claiming to be evangelical Christian, even though I think that's his background. He's aligned with our message to the world, right? And one of these issues, this is very important, masculinity. According to the Bible says God created them male and female, and he said this is good. So when we have attack on masculinity, it's an attack on what we believe as Christians. It's an attack on the scriptures. It's beyond that. It's an attack on God. It's an attack on nature. It's an attack on virtues. There are masculine virtues. There's masculine vices as well. There's feminine virtues and there's feminine vices. But we have this large movement to feminize and emasculate men, and the church has not been speaking out against it. And Christianity has been, by some critics, seen as weak. Like Nietzsche, Christianity is weak and feminine. And we need something strong. And that's not what Christianity is. According to Nietzsche, he's wrong. And I want to mention Raymond Ibrahim. He's talked about this issue. I've dealt with it in my Hammer of God series. And these issues of the power and the benefits and the virtue of masculinity is a subject that Jordan Peterson addresses in his teachings. And then people are dismayed that young men are attracted to that. Why? Because you're under attack by I'll give you, they're celebrating Born That Way. What about these people with different homosexuals, whatever? It's like, what about the way we're born? You're saying that's bad for us. I mean, and the masculine impulse created human civilization. All the advancements in medicine, the arts, technology, has been driven by men, and yet we're supposed to be ashamed. It's like what the leftists and progressives are saying is that men, by being masculine, are innately evil and should be ashamed, and our masculinity should be suppressed and looked upon with scorn and denigrated. And like I said, some people think this is Christian. We have this perversion of Christianity. It's like, well, Christianity wants to war against the masculine impulse. Back to Raymond Ibrahim, this thought. what he was saying is, you look at his book he wrote, Defenders of the West, where you have Western civilization under attack, and it was men, warriors, Christian warriors, like Charles Martel and the Polish ruler Sobieski, where all seemed to be lost. I mean, Western civilization, Europe was going to fall to the Muslims, and a Christian warrior stood up and put his life on the line and fought and miraculously won to preserve Western civilization. And these military victories were decisive and led to the creation of Western society and all the technological advances. I mean, if it didn't happen, we wouldn't be what we are now. But Christians are like, oh, don't fight, and just be kind, be weak. And there's another attack on Christianity. There's this TV series, and also rewriting history, the Vikings show, Vikings. And it seems silly. I want to tell you, and this is why we engage the arts. A lot of things that aren't true, that become commonplace, is because movies and television shows take just things that aren't true about history and they popularize them in dramatic presentations. And people, like the movie Roots, for example. It wasn't until David Livingstone in the late 1800s that a white man went into the interior of Africa. White people, the Portuguese, would go to the coast of, they called it the slave coast of Africa, and they would buy slaves from black Africans who would go into the interior and capture slaves or take prisoners and sell them at the slave market. Arabs and black Africans sold African slaves to Europeans. And in fact, when David Livingstone went into the interior of Africa, one of his goals was to end the slave trade. But in the Roots, the original late 80s Roots miniseries, so it's late 70s, early 80s Roots, you had, Kunta Kinte, he's running and he's being pursued by a bunch of white people, chasing him down, throwing chains on him. That never happened historically. But I remember this ridiculous movie, Django Unchained. And, it seems like a stupid, silly, ridiculous film, over the top. But I was with some friends of mine who were black, and they were thinking that movie was actually reflective of history. What they call it, Mandango, where southern landowners would have black slaves engaged in gladiatorial combat. It never happened. You can look at the historical record. It never happened. I think that was just came up as in these black exploitation movies in the mid 70s. They came up with the notion of it's totally fictional, but they put these in like Roots has this veneer of being historical. So we should be aware. So also anti-Christian messages are put in films and TV. Distortions of historical fact to make Christianity look bad. I'll give an example. The recent Addams Family series, Wednesday, where creating the Addams Family movies, or even the cartoons that Charles Addams did, they're humorous, right? I don't think Charles Adams had a vendetta against Christianity. You had that scene which is kind of derived from the cartoons in Addams Family Values about the Indians, but in the Wednesday, and of course, Tim Burton has used a lot of, you see it in Edward Scissorhands, a lot of his work, is he's put a lot of anti-Christian messages in his films, but creating these false notions of history and popularizing it through entertainment is very dangerous. So that's why we need to engage the arts. We need to tell our own stories, to get the facts out there about history, and not these lies and distortions which are dangerous. So as a chaplain, you come across soldiers who are, they're Druidish, they're pagan, or they're practitioners of Norse heathenry, right? This is happening to our young people. And I'm coming across it. It's got to be significant for me as a military chaplain to come across this religious movement. Not just one soldier, I think it's like 3. That means it's not a massive movement, but it's a significant movement. Probably tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of young men disaffected by this toxic masculinity movement are renouncing Christianity and starting to worship the Norse gods. Tyr, which is, was it Tuesday? Tus, is that his name? He's the kind of like, he's a war god like Mars or Odin and Thor. And it's like, why is this happening? So Vikings is one of these series that's the anti-Christian series, praising, extolling, and showing Norse paganism as a virtuous. Look at this. Look at these men are under attack for being manly, and Christianity seems to be feminine. Weak. You want to be nice. You want to be kind. We want to be kind and nice, but it's weakness. That's how it's perceived. Christianity is a religion that wants men to be feminized and weak. That's not true, but that's how it's presented. So Raymond Ibrahim is like, look at these defenders of the faith, these Christian warriors who saved Christianity, preserved Western civilization by picking up a weapon and fighting and dying for Christianity. And we should, of course, a lot of women and certain men don't like that, but it's like, the hordes of Islam coming to eradicate Christianity. And there are men that fought and died for religious freedom to preserve a Christian world. And we should respect that and them for what they did. But Vikings, this pagan propaganda, attacking Christianity, extolling Norse heathenism, which extols, it's a warrior culture, right? Like the samurai, or some Native American Indian tribes. The warrior, the way of the warrior. So here you have, or in the fictional setting, like the Mandalorians in Star Wars, a class of warriors. And that's how the Vikings are presented, as having these manly qualities. And, they're fighters, they're warriors. So masculinity is not denigrated or seen as toxic, but it's celebrated. So, these young men, you're always under attack by these leftists. There's a war on women, that's what the CNN says, and there's toxic masculinity out there. Men are innately evil. The feminine virtues, or however we should, if that's what we call it. So these men are, they're repulsed by this. They're under attack, and it's like, well, I'll just embrace this. This is what's happening. Because of the attack on masculinity, because Christianity is perceived as being weak and feminized and feminizing, young men are converting to Druidism, paganism, Norse heathenry. It's happening. I've come across it several times. So this is a significant new religious movement that's going across America. And this Vikings series is evangelizing for Norse neo-paganism. Neo-paganism. You get the young people saying, I'm a heathen, I'm a pagan. And this is this is a movie or a TV series that's promoting the religion of Norse heathenry. It's happening. So, and we're not addressing these things with apologetics. This is an issue. This is an important issue in Christian apologetics. Young men brought up in the church converting to, and it kind of blows my mind. I've read retellings of Norse mythology, and some of these stories are like, they're written by Christians. So what happened is, I forget the name of the person, but you got the Eddas, right? And he's like, the author is like, well, we're Christian, but we think there's value in the stories of the old gods. They're probably just legends. Maybe these were human beings that stories developed around, but we're going to preserve these stories for posterity. So here's what when we were pagans, we told these stories, and some of them are just absurd and ridiculous. And they're written to be fun, honestly. Some of the stories and most of the stories of Thor and Odin and Loki, just amusing stories. Some are like dramatic, but the people who wrote the stories down didn't believe in them. So these Christians wrote these texts just for entertainment value. And that's all we have, really. Other information besides the Eddas is fragmentary. And they're trying to build a new religion. And there's certain Norse gods, all you know about, or goddesses, all you know is their names. You don't know the mythology, the stories behind them. But with apologetics, we have to be dealing, like the attacks on masculinity. We got to address it. We got to stand up to it, and we have to condemn it. And Matt Walsh talks about this in his book, Church of Cowards. It's like we have these social issues that are emptying out our pews, and you're so stupid, ignorant, and apathetic that you don't want to address these serious issues. People who are being brought up in the church, you should know better, are leaving the faith for these issues because you're a coward and you don't want to deal with these attacks on manhood and the family. Wake up! Why are you behind the pulpit? What good are you? And we don't even know this is going on. They don't. And I see it as a chaplain. I know this is a significant movement. This is serious stuff, and our people engaged in apologetics are not taking it seriously. And like I said, this is why comedy like the Babylon Bee, and we have to be involved in the entertainment industry. We have to create our own entertainment companies and infrastructure ourselves. Just like, I'll give you two examples. I've talked about this before. But Robert Duvall made a movie, this has been a couple of decades ago, called The Apostle. And I kind of got some mixed feelings about it, but it's a true-to-life depiction of evangelical Christians. Kind of a scandalous pastor in some way. He has his virtues, he's sincere. He has his internal struggles. The apostle character that Robert Duvall plays is a flawed human being, but he's sincere in his faith, genuine. He just has his inner demons he doesn't know how to deal with properly. But it's the gospel's presented in it. I can understand some people's issues with that film, but it doesn't do a caricature of evangelical Christianity. It isn't meant to mock or ridicule. And Robert Duvall has, the original MASH movie was an attack on evangelical Christians and mockery of the faith as a sacrilegious recreation of the Last Supper in the original MASH movie. Blasphemous and sacrilege. So here, Robert Duvall is going to make a movie, a kind of a sympathetic portrayal of evangelical Christianity in the South. So he had to finance that movie himself because a Hollywood studio is not going to do that. If it's a movie attacking or ridiculing evangelical Christians, they'll subsidize that. They'll support that. The producers will bankroll that. Even if it's destined to be a flop, they'll put out attacks on mocking, ridiculing Christianity. The Passion of the Christ. Mel Gibson had to finance that movie himself. It's basically an independent production because Hollywood, and then that movie, we've had a lot of good, I think the last big epic, the last big biblical sword and sandals epic was The Greatest Story Ever Told. I need to watch it again. It's not my favorite Jesus movie. It's got Max von Sydow in it. He's a great actor. That was his breakthrough role. That introduced him to a wider American audience. That started his career. And but the movie, I think the Greatest Story Ever Told, it's just too somber. It's oppressively reverent. You can see the difference with The Chosen. I'm not a big fan of The Chosen, but Jesus is human and the apostles human and relatable. And The Greatest Story Ever Told, people are like just stained glass window figures. They're stiff and not relatable. But there are some good things about that movie. I want to be fair to it. I'm just saying that. So that was the last big Hollywood biblical film. There were good productions put on TV, like Jesus of Nazareth, I think in 1977, and then shortly after that you had Peter and Paul, where Anthony Hopkins portrayed the Apostle Paul. Those are both very good productions, but that's just television, not in the theater. We didn't have this big Christian movie until The Passion of the Christ. Then several films and streaming videos and miniseries were produced that some of them were good, some of them were not as good, but you also had Sherwood Baptist Church doing Fakes and the Giants and things like that. It had an impact, and we have to, Hollywood's not going to do it for us. We have to do it ourselves, right? But, they are going to create things like The Viking, and this is a religious film series, or mini-series, promoting Norse mythology, and they're winning converts. This isn't, for them, it's a proselytizing film series, and it's effective. They're creating, Vikings has created a new movement, a religious movement across America, probably around the world, where people are leaving Christianity and worshiping pagan gods, and trying to recreate a religion based on texts written by Christians, and some of which are satirical in nature. But as absurd as it seems to me, this is happening. This is happening, and we need to address it. And part of the reason why this is happening, part of the reason is because we're allowing an attack on the family, the home, gender roles, and masculinity, and we don't want to speak out against it. So then you have this movie promoting masculinity and masculine virtues, and promoting paganism, and young men who feel, isolated and rejected are attracted to this, and this is not good. We're actually going backwards into idolatry and worshiping of pagan gods. Young men raised in the church, marginalized by society and the progressive establishment, and we're losing their souls. And we have to address this issue. So all these issues are related. I really think we need to, we need to deal with these issues. Just like what is a woman? Just watching what's going on, how they're mutilating the genitals of children, and you can't. We're starting to see a rejection of that, but people are afraid to question it. So what's going on is Michaela Peterson is Jordan Peterson's daughter, and she was saying, it's like, I don't know if I should in my podcast. I don't want to talk about Muhammad. I don't want to talk about Islam. So David Wood is saying, you got to do it. We got to do it because we need to stop the violence. I want to make jihadism untenable. We have to totally destroy. Someone was saying, I was addressing these issues in episode 1 of this apologetic series, and a family member's like, how many converts to Islam have you made? Islam's a good religion. She's Muslim, pretty much. So she's left the faith and embraced Islam to a certain extent anyway. I don't know why. She thinks it's a beautiful religion, so why are you criticizing Islam as you are? And I did a lot of research on Aramaic. I talked about this in the first lecture, about Syriac Christianity and Aramaic. And it's like, wow, it's really amazing that there's a large community of Christians, Aramaic-speaking Christians in the Middle East. And then ISIS goes in there, and pretty much certain places I've been to several Christian villages that don't exist anymore. People I knew were slaughtered by ISIS. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. I want to end it, and I want to end it forever. And it's like, how many converts? Maybe a couple does that. It doesn't matter. What we want is we want to make 1 billion converts by making this belief system of religious violence in the name of the Quran and Muhammad. We want to totally destroy this religious system forever. Jihadism is going to go bye-bye. It's going to be a bad human memory. We can do it. We can totally destroy this belief system, and we need to make it untenable. It's important for us to do that. And Riemann Ibrahim talked about this in one of his videos. He says, actually we should care when we see people living under Sharia law. It's draconian, it's satanic, it's cruel, it's barbaric. I wouldn't wish, because I love mankind, I don't want people to see people suffering under such an evil system, an oppressive evil system. I don't want it to grow. It shouldn't exist anywhere on earth. Such barbarism, savagery, and cruelty. It's like I said, it's inhuman. It's wicked. I love mankind. I don't want people to see, going around the Islamic world and seeing how women are treated over there, it offends me. I mean, no human being should endure the torment that these people, but it's not staying over there. They're imperialistic and they want it to conquer the world. And we have to stop it. Like, once ISIS came around, they started committing these atrocities, it's like, I'm done. No more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm done. We need to do whatever we can to stop that. This has gone on for 1,400 years, and we need to do everything in our power to stop it forever. And I was listening to, what's his name? Jimmy Dore him and his speaker were talking about Don Bongino and Kash Patel. They're lying about Epstein. And he says, sometimes people need to put their life on the line. We have martyrs. And something else. It's like, there's some things worth living for. There's some things worth dying for. To save mankind from jihadism, we might just have to say, okay, kill me. Recently, James O'Keefe he has these videos on Epstein Island, everything that went on, other things. He said, I'm going to put this information out. I want to make sure I'm not just the only one. They could kill me, but if everybody knows about it, they can't kill us all. This is happening in America where people are murdered, by our intelligence agencies. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone in our government had James O'Keefe killed. But like I said, early Christians embraced jihadism. It's better to talk about these issues. The reason why they want to kill people, to silence them, is because their beliefs are untenable. They cannot withstand argument and information. They can't have the light of truth shine on what they believe, because it cannot stand. It will collapse. So they have to keep people scared, afraid. That's the only way to protect this belief system of jihadism, is to make people afraid to question it. And we need to attack it and destroy it, and maybe put our lives on the line, because we're just one human being. What about mankind as a whole? What about humanity? This is a danger to mankind, to human civilization, to our species, jihadism, and it has to be destroyed. We have to discredit it, make it, expose it as an untenable system, and it needs to be discarded forever. And we need to make sure that this repulsive belief system has no appeal to anybody. Even people born into it need to be repulsed by it and rejected. And this is important. This is, yes, we're going to get these souls saved, but this is also about the survival of mankind. This system has to be destroyed. One of the greatest evils that mankind has ever known, jihadism, has to be destroyed forever. And Michaela, she just needs to be bold enough to brave it. It's like, we have to talk about these issues. And we have to get, it's like, okay, you can mock and ridicule Jesus Christ. You can make fun of Buddha, nobody would care. You can mock Hindu gods. But this is a protective system. You cannot challenge jihadism. And it's like, we're going to say, no, we're tired of this system. We're going to attack it. We're going to mock it. We're going to ridicule it. We're going to look at it and expose it so we can destroy this forever. If millions of people or billions of people believe in this, we're going to save mankind, save these people from it, to show these are untenable beliefs, and people aren't going to hold them anymore. We're just going to totally discredit it forever. So this is not really a threat to anybody anymore. It's absurd, it's ridiculous, and needs to be shown to be what it is. It's like, oh, that's not very nice or kind. Yes, it is. How many people, you can save mankind and civilization, save people from poverty and war and destruction, save lives by destroying this belief system, jihadism, and through argumentation. We want to stop the violence. That's why we want to stop this. We don't want any more violence. We don't want any more jihad. We don't want any more holy war. We don't want any more of this Islamic imperialism. It has to be done away with forever. So let's talk about Arabic here. So back to Raymond Ibrahim. He's an Arabic speaker. And you get these jihadists, these Dawa guys are able to say, they lie a lot. And Raymond Ibrahim is like, I can read the Arabic. I'm a native, he's a Coptic Christian, native Arabic speaker. And we need to be learning Arabic, because like I did in my doctoral thesis, we need to present the history of jihad and persecution. These jihadists, it's like, oh, we've been so tolerant. And it's like, no, you haven't. It's like, we know our own history. This is our history. So, history of them jihadists attacking and killing us. That's our history. So Raymond Ibrahim can get the accounts by the jihadists boasting about how many Christians they slaughtered, which is our history. It's our history told from their perspective, right? So we need to know those historical sources. And people say, oh, jihadism was about peace and love, and it's like, no, it's not. We can read your source text in Arabic. And I've been doing some work, my Lives of the Apostles, like the Abdias of Babylon. Like this is the Ethiopic version, the Gadla Hayarwat. But we have a complete Ethiopic edition of the Lives of the 12 Apostles, but it also exists in Arabic, the entire text in Arabic, and it's probably translated from Arabic into Ethiopic. The Diatessaron, which was the version of the gospel used by Aramaic Christians for centuries. They suppressed it. It doesn't exist in Aramaic anymore, but Aramaic and Arabic are very similar. And the diatessaron exists in an Arabic translation from the Aramaic. And there's a lot of important Arabic Christian literature. So we're not only looking at the history of jihadism and how it's impacted the Christian world, which we need to do by reading Arabic and read accounts of the wars that we've suffered as Christians. Read about them, the chronicles of the wars they fought against us, so we can tell our story based on, them describing what they did to us. But we also have Christian literature that's written in Arabic, important Christian literature. So I'm working on this. Arabic is the language of Islam, but it's also important Christian language to this day. So we should, and just think of the power, Christian apologists like Raymond Ibrahim, Arabic, and that gives us a great advantage in Christian apologetics, where we can expose these jihadists for liars by opening the Arabic text and say, look at this. You claim this is jihadism about peace and love and internal struggle. We can read. You can't lie to us when we know Arabic. What you do is you read the text, you preach jihadism in Arabic, and you preach peace and love in English. We can't. You're not going to be able to play this game anymore if more of us are conversant and literate in Arabic and able to use the source texts. So this is important in apologetics. We have to know and use Arabic. In conclusion, we talked about Jordan Peterson, the importance of masculinity, and how we are empowering paganism by not challenging the leftist and progressives' attack on masculinity. We're too weak that instead of taking a stand in the Bible and say, "Thus saith the Lord," this is God's plan for mankind. This is how God made man. We want to be cowards. Matt Walsh's Church of Cowards, and we're allowing people to set up idols and start worshiping idols again because we're afraid to tackle these issues. We're afraid to push back against the. This is the problem with the Republican Party, by the way. And Matt Walsh talked about this. Social conservatism. They hate us. They hate evangelicals. The country club Republicans, they don't want to. That's why they hate Trump, because Trump actually pushes back against liberalism. Actually, it's just a game for these people. We got to get rid of. I think we're forced in the Republican Party. We got to get rid of these people. We got to vote them out. We got to replace them. What we need to do is drive all these left-wing progressive Republicans into the Democrat Party where they belong. We say, take a stand. It's like, no. If you're a Democrat, get your worthless ass out of the Republican Party and go join the Democrat Party. We don't want you anymore. We're sick of you. Get out. Like right now. Trump is president. Nothing is being advanced, hardly. They have this stupid, the big beautiful bill, an omnibus bill. We should not have 1,000-page bills. As a supporter of Trump, I don't agree with that. But on the other hand, it's like, well, they're not passing anything. If they pass this, we might get a lot of good agenda items in there. 1,000 pages, we might be able to stick some of our stuff in there because Mike Johnson, a fake Christian, a liar, a phony, he doesn't want to advance conservatism or Christianity, claims to be a Christian, but supports progressivism. It's disgusting. Why can't we have men of integrity and honor, warriors, fighting for what's right instead of weak, insipid disgraces like, if he was a sincere person, I think that's great he's vocal about his faith. But he's not. So, these are important issues. We have to address these issues. And because we're not, we can't even keep our own children in church because we're cowards. Oh, we don't want to talk about these issues. It could offend people. But because you're not willing to address these issues, your sons are turning to worship pagan gods, and they're raising their children into paganism, and it's your own fault. And Christian apologists aren't even dealing with these issues. So, historiography. Like I said, with Protestant historiography, one of these things that Raymond Ibrahim talks about is like Saladin, right? Saladin. Everybody talks about Saladin. Oh, he's more Christian than the Christians. He's such a great person. If you read what's written by Saladin, about Saladin, He's a jihadist. He's like Osama bin Laden or al-Baghdadi. He is a ruthless murderer. It's like, well, where did this idea of this super virtuous, super virtuous Saladin, who's, a better, you look at all these Christians, they're all terrible, and Saladin's such a godly person, better than Jesus Christ himself, better than the Apostle Paul. One of the most wonderful, virtuous men who ever lived in the history of mankind is Saladin. This comes from Sir Walter Scott and his Ivanhoe and all this fictional crap. So this is before movies, fictional literature. So this isn't a new phenomenon with the films. This has been going on with literature. And this is something, unfortunately, that came from Protestantism, is, we are protesting against Catholicism, but sometimes they take it too far, right? And Sir Walter Scott's like, oh, the Crusades are bad, and the Muslims, the jihadists are good. And this fictional idea of Saladin, people confuse this with the historical character. But Raymond Ibrahim is like, I've read what's written in the historical accounts and primary historical sources about this guy is worse than Osama bin Laden. He's a monster. The historical Saladin is a jihadist and a monster. So this comes from, and I think he's right about this, I've realized this before, that these Protestants are so anti-Catholic that they're becoming pro-Muslim. And this isn't, it's not even historical, it's a fantasy literature. And yet it's had this impact. And it's being picked up, people falsifying history, telling these fictional stories from Sir Walter Scott and his Ivanhoe and his other fictional books, confusing fiction with history. So, I'm a Protestant, I'm evangelical, but we need to rightly divide the word of truth. We also need to rightly divide history. And when you're dealing with apologetics, we need what's going to help advance the cause. What are the threats to the faith that we have to confront? And like I said, jihadism is one of them, and we need to show we did that. Some extremists in the Protestant movement become pro-Muslim and, falsifying history to advance, this fictional, Sir Walter Scott creates this fictional Saladin who's a better person than Jesus Christ himself, basically an object of worship and veneration, and it's not true. And it's, so what's going on is he intends to attack or criticize Catholicism, but he's actually becoming a powerful weapon against the New Testament, against the Bible, against Jesus Christ, against the Scriptures, against everything we believe. And Raymond Ibrahim says this is he's talking about Martin Luther, and that's something else we can talk about. You talk about Martin Luther real quick. Martin Luther. I have to give a whole teaching about Martin Luther. We wouldn't have the Protestant Reformation without him, right? And there's a lot of things I really admire about Martin Luther, but he was a flawed man. He had his virtues, he had his vices. And there's things I really don't like about Martin Luther. There's things I greatly admire about him. But Raymond Ibrahim is saying that, we shouldn't have the Crusades, we shouldn't have, fight. Then the Turks are about to conquer Vienna. Germany is about to fall. And Luther's like, wait a minute, I take it all back. We have to fight the Turks. So it just shows one of the mistakes. See, we don't want to continue in where Luther's right, we want to continue that. Where he was wrong, we should acknowledge he's wrong. He saw he was wrong. He's like, okay, I was thinking Islam's a virtuous, good religion, and it's like, oh wait, I was wrong. They're going to conquer. What's going to happen if Germany, Catholics, the Battle of Lepanto, Catholics and Lutherans had to unite together to stop the Muslims from conquering all of Western Europe. What would happen what if Germany fell to Islam the way the Balkans and Romania did? And that's why we get the story of Vlad Tepes, Dracula. The historical Vlad Tepes was saved Western Europe. They had to fight and die to protect us from Islam. So at least Luther recognized where he was wrong and he corrected it and said we have to fight against, because Germany is going to collapse and fall to Islam. Thank God that didn't happen. So we have to. What I'm saying So we have our Protestant lens, and there's good things about that. First, we might need to correct our lenses a little bit, right? So one of the things that Protestants, we have to move away from this, right? Is, this is our attitudes. Here's the year, I don't know, year 100. Let's just say it could be 90, but anyway, John writes the Apocalypse, right? The Apostle, the New Testament, as we know it, is written, and they believe the church fell and ceased to exist until 1517. Then Luther restores Christianity. So there's so what we need to do is okay, we should judge history from our perspective, Bible-based Protestant evangelicalism. We have to acknowledge the fact that Christianity didn't disappear and reappear. There might have been flaws and faults in the church. But we have to embrace our Catholic origins, not Catholicism, but that's where Protestantism came from. That's our background, like it or not. And this is our heritage. And just like Luther, we have to look at what was good about medieval Catholicism and what's bad about it. And like some apologetics, Thomas Aquinas, he's dealing with Islam. He wrote against Islam. There's a lot of thinkers and philosophers dealing with, it's like you can't just ignore this period completely. We need to judge it from our perspective, but we have to embrace this as part of our heritage. Like I said, a lot of work done in apologetics from the medieval philosophers. And I got this book on medieval philosophers. I've said this before. I was in Syria. I went to the Crac de Chevalier Crusader Castle. I was amazed at the engineering feat of this impregnable castle built in the medieval times. And like I said, if you watch movies and television, you think that people in the Middle Ages are just retarded. They're not just morons, ignoramuses, stupid, imbeciles. And so I'm looking at this Crusader castle. I'm amazed by it. Or Gothic cathedrals. People who are as backwards as the Hollywood would have us believe that the medieval church and Christian would not be able to produce the Crac de Chevalier. That castle, these cathedrals, if people were as ignorant, stupid, and moronic as Hollywood and the leftist establishment have us believe, they wouldn't be able to make these grandiose structures. They act like these people like Neanderthals or whatever. Oh, and it's because of Christianity, right? That's what Gibbon said. This great Roman Empire, and then we become savages for 1,000 years. So we need to embrace. I had this book on, medieval philosophers. Very, if you study philosophy, it's very important. If you're going to be conversant in philosophy, you have to study the medieval philosophers. A lot of these arguments for the existence of God. It's important. They weren't the morons that they would have us believe them to be. That's anti-Christian propaganda. If you don't know, and that's what Muslim apologetics do. Apologists, these Dawa people, they know that we don't know our own history, and they don't know we don't know the history of Eastern Christianity, and they exploit our ignorance, and they say things that just are not true, but it works. They can tell lies because we're ignorant. We don't know the facts. We were too lazy and indifferent to address. Nobody cares about our sons. What about the massive fentanyl? Loss of faith, despair, drug abuse, deaths, and we don't even address that issue. Our kids leaving the church, worshiping idolatry and pagan gods, getting into witchcraft and sorcery. We don't care. We don't care. I don't know what people profess to be Christians. What do they care about? It's total apathy. We see what's society collapsing around us, and just because you don't want to fight for human civilization. What do you expect is going to happen? So we need to revise Protestant historiography. And I was talking about Constantine today during the Sabbath school message, and there's all these stories about Constantine being this evil man and corrupting Christianity. Some of the things they say are not true. And in fact, some of the things said about Constantine are the opposite of truth. It's like, Constantine was the first pope. Really? He moved the capital of the Roman Empire from Rome to Constantinople. He never claimed to be he wasn't the bishop of Rome. In fact, he decreased the importance of Rome. Rome was the capital of the world. he abandoned Rome and created Constantinople, New Rome. So he weakened, in a sense, the power and influence of the city of Rome by abandoning it. So it's like, how is he the first? We mean he's the first pope. And he got these crazy stuff in the Da Vinci Code. Oh, he collated the Bible. He had nothing to do with the canonization process, well, at least minimally. He didn't really impact it in any significant way. The New Testament pretty much was, as we know it today, there's a few books that were disputed and a few books that were, including the New Testament, that fell out of use, but he didn't play any significant role in canonization of Scripture. There's a little scandal, and I guess his wife might have had an affair with his son, and he executed them both, so very bizarre circumstance. But it seems like, even though he had this scandal in his life, he seemed to have been sincere in his conversion to Christianity. He did not make Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. That happened like 70 years later by Theodosius, I think in the year there's a book with a number in the title that escapes me right now. 481, something like that. Theodosius is the one who... So Christianity didn't even become the official religion of the Roman Empire. And he ended the persecution. Constantine really is one of the most influential Christians in world history. Talk about Martin Luther. Constantine is as important as Luther is. He changed. It's because of Constantine, Christianity is what it is today, really. And we demonize this man. And he wasn't a perfect man. He had his flaws. I mentioned, how do you handle an embarrassing scandal within the family? I don't think executing people is the proper way to do it. But it's an interesting life. But no, people don't know about the historical. They don't bother to read about who Constantine really is. They just have these conspiracy theories. They don't have any basis. Like, okay, Constantine's the first pope, really? What about the bishops of Rome that were before him? What about him decreasing the prominence of Rome by moving the capital, to Constantinople? Even today, to the leader of the Eastern Orthodox Church is the Archbishop of Constantinople. He basically created that office, for the most part. So, if we need to know the facts and stop. When you expose the truth, don't perpetuate falsehoods. Like I said, there's a book I have called Defending Constantine. So what happens is, like, you hear all this crap, it's like everybody wants to talk about Constantine this, Constantine that. This is the worst, most evil person ever lived in history. And it's like, okay, I hear all this crap about Constantine all the time, and it's like, well, who is he really? What did he? Let's just look at the real accounts. We have historical records about this. What do these people know that make all these claims about Constantine? Nothing. They don't have any exposure to. Have they read the primary sources? No. So it's like, plus you're repeating progressive left-wing propaganda to discredit the church. You're perpetuating these falsehoods. If you're going to obsess about Constantine all the time, why don't you just read something about it so you know what you're talking about? And check these. Don't read a piece of propaganda. Read genuine history without an agenda, if you can find such a thing. Or at least an alternative perspective so you can balance one point of view versus the other, where, Constantine was satanic, he's a pagan that destroyed Christianity forever, versus, and as evangelicals, our Bible is our faith is centered around the Bible, right? The Orthodox Church and the Catholics, they have some teachings that are not biblical, and they say, okay, they're not biblical, but we believe in apostolical tradition. So this is the Catholic and the Orthodox point of view, right? We have apostolic tradition and the Bible, right? And as Protestants, if there's something we don't look at as biblical, some of these traditions, like, well, that's not scriptural, we're going to reject that, but we accept the Bible. And this is another argument. It's like, where do you think our Bible came from? Catholics and Orthodox, different faith traditions, yes. We have Syriac versions of the Bible. We have Ethiopic, Coptic versions of the Bible. It's all the same in different languages. But our primary focus, and I believe this is correctly, we have to be Bible-centric. But, these people that, we think, some Protestants act like, this is satanic, the Catholic Church. It's like Catholics and Orthodox monks and scholars copied the Bible down for us, right? Protestantism didn't exist. Well, you had certain groups that, like the Waldensians and others, that, were, you can find people that had shared a lot of, there's precedence for what we believe as Protestants in earlier movements, but that being conceded, there was no Protestantism as it exists today. It's an offshoot of Catholicism, really. Correcting, like going back to the centrality of Scripture, ridding ourselves of unbiblical traditions, but we just have to acknowledge our heritage, and we have to acknowledge the contributions of the church and our forefathers, Catholic and Orthodox forefathers in the faith. We have to do that. And we need to have the centrality of the Scripture to judge where they're right and where they're wrong. But we just have to acknowledge that this is part of our heritage, and we have to stop. We're demonizing Christianity when you just this unrelenting attacks on the medieval church and, just Catholicism as a whole. I've talked this morning about, atrocities, the Albigensian Crusades, where they slaughtered Albigensians. That's not the way of Christ to do that. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, where they had a horrible massacre of tens of thousands of Protestants. You can hold them accountable. But there's also important contributions that they made as well. Like, let's talk about Rodney Stark. My father talked about this, and I read this before. Rodney Stark wrote about God's battalions, about the case for the Crusades, and he wrote. He also wrote The Triumph of Christianity and other books about positive dominion. I mentioned this before. Tom Holland, positive contributions for humanity coming from the Christian Church, the Catholics and the Orthodox, the Church of the East, the Coptic churches. Psalms. Are we sitting in the seat of the scornful by mocking and ridiculing our forefathers in the faith who gave us the Scripture that we hold so dear? We wouldn't have it if not for these people. Some of these people died to give us the Scriptures. These manuscripts they use, like these King James only people, that's the traditional Byzantine text. That's the Greek Orthodox text of the New Testament that you use. And why are you attacking these people like they're Muslims or Hindus or, why don't you acknowledge them as fellow Christians, even though we don't agree on everything? That's, they can talk about apostolic tradition, but the true apostolic tradition which we judge everything, the apostolic tradition we received is the New Testament. It has to have priority over everything else. And we're all held accountable to that. That's not the Orthodox position or the Catholic position. They don't have the centrality of Scripture that we do. I believe that in this aspect, we're right and they're wrong. But are we sitting in the seat of scorners by attacking the people who gave us the Scriptures? Blessed is anyone who rejects the advice of the wicked, does not take a stand in the path of the scorners. This is a different translation. I wish I had talk about the King James. I wish I had a King James here right now for me. Blessed is the man who stands not in the counsel of the wicked, or stands in the path of the sinners, nor does he sit with the scorners, but he delights in the law of the Lord, the Scriptures, and he meditates on it day and night. So are we sitting in the seat of the scorners? These people that are trying to destroy Christianity. Are we aiding and abetting their efforts by joining them and attacking it's our Christian heritage? It's like, why are we doing that? I remember, look, if there's sin in the church, we have to expose and condemn it. I don't want to whitewash things either, right? But if they've done things and they're correct, why should we acknowledge that as well? There's a movie that came out a few years ago. I think it's called Spotlight. And they're trying to embarrass the Catholic Church because of how they handled, this sex abuse scandals. But Hollywood has its sex abuse scandals, oh wow, look at this movie. It's like, who's Hollywood? Who are they? With Weinstein, and they cover up their own. It's human nature. We do condemn sin, and anybody that's engaged in sexual impropriety should be held accountable for it. But it's like, well, wait a minute, you Hollywood, Weinstein, you're going to attack the church for how the Catholic Church mishandled a sex abuse scandal? Hollywood, excuse me, I'm not going to take any criticism from you. You're worse than, look at what they do. They're going to act like they're all innocent. They have no right to condemn. Anywhere it exists, it should be condemned. But you realize it's like, this is propaganda. They're trying to attack and discredit the church. We don't want to participate in any effort by the left, by secular progressives, anywhere in the arts, in music, in history. Are we doing the devil's work? Is that what we want to do? And then, like I said, with the Vikings, we don't even address these issues, and then we wonder what's going on. How are these things happening? Because you're disengaged. You're so apathetic, and it's time to wake up and fight for the truth and engage in apologetics. And these are important issues that we have to address. And because we haven't addressed them, like I said, we can't even keep our people in our pews. We're losing, we're raising kids in the church, and because of our apathy and indifference and our just profound laziness to understand what's going on, now our kids, instead of being baptized, are worshiping Thor and Odin. It's our failure. We can't be playing this game anymore. It's time for a change. And we have to look at, bad strategies we've been involved in. It's a battle for the hearts and minds. This is about saving souls, right, and advancing the kingdom of God. And we have to do that. It's time for us to wake up and put on the whole armor of God and do battle. It's time for that has come. So these are important issues in Christian apologetics. It's time for us to be informed. Scripture says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So I'm putting knowledge out there, and hopefully we can be resuscitated. And not just that, but it's like, in the plane, right? The mask falls down. You gotta put your mask on, start breathing the fresh air, and then go out and help people, right? Go out and help other people. But we need to be equipped for the battle so we can help others. And the time has come for us to be engaged